guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel and spending some of your day with me. Guys, today we're going to talk about how bass fishing, especially tournament bass fishing, is discriminating against average income Americans, and especially against lower income Americans. We've dug into this a little bit in the past, but guys, I have seen this become so evident really just over the past year or two, how this has really had a huge impact on our sport, and it's transforming our sport into something that's not better. It's actually a lot worse. So I want to dig into that. I'm going to identify, there's about three primary things here that I want to talk about, how it's got to this point and what we can do about it. So we're going to dig into that in today's episode here. Also, guys, before we get started, just two quick housekeeping tips or quick reminder. Anybody interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, just go to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler. Shoot me a private message for details with that. And also, guys, we do have my winter Fish the Moment Lake Map breakdowns up for sale right now on the fishthemoment.com website. I'll put the link in the description to my map breakdowns. Great resources, guys, to get some good fishing places on your favorite lake or a lake you've never been to, get some tips and advice on how to catch them during the winter months. So all the links in the description there. Really appreciate you guys checking that out. Okay, guys, I am absolutely sick about this. What I've seen, how everything that I've seen develop, especially over the past 2 or 3 years, that is turning the sport into an elitist activity. Now, we've done some videos on this in the past, but one of the things I really want to touch on in this particular video is how the discrimination against the average income American that likes to fish and maybe wants to, have a career at fishing at some point, or you're young and you want to do that. If you're not funded, if you don't have a safety net like wealthy parents or a business or some type of a trust fund or something like that, it's pretty much impossible to do that. Because you figure that, okay, let's say the average household income in the United States, the household income for a family is like $77,000, $78,000 a year. And if you figure also, if you compete at the top level of professional fishing, Bassmaster Elite Series, the MPFL, Bass Pro Tour, all that type of stuff, maybe not as much the Elite Series, because they did have some entry fee reductions because they're robbing money out of the Opens to subsidize the Elite Series. But for the MPFL and the Bass Pro Tour, it's going to pretty much cost you, between your entry fees and your expenses, over $100,000 a year to compete. That's even before you make a cast. And then on top of that, you got your household expenses. It's like everybody's got a house payment, most everybody, car payment, insurance, groceries. You got to feed your family. Add another $100,000 to that, or whatever, or less, depending upon your lifestyle. But basically what we're talking about is if you look that it costs $100,000 a year to fish, and the average household income is $70-some thousand a year, that's a family that, it's less than that for individuals. You can see that this sport discriminates against average income anglers because they can't afford to do that. Now, the discrimination even goes further when you figure that the fact that due to forward-facing sonar, the reality of it, without trying to paint a picture, I'm not blaming, I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, I'm stating fact here, the undeniable fact that you can't deny one. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on, you can't deny this. The majority of the tournament anglers in this country are getting to be exceedingly young. Back 10, 15 years ago, the average classic qualifier was in their 40s. Now it's in their 20s. And sorry for the glitch there, guys. My phone goofed up. I had to restart the video. But anyway, what I was saying is we've seen an emergence of basically a ton of high school and college anglers that go through that particular system. And when they get to be 19 or 20, 21 years old, they're going to these top tours, the top pro tours. This is one of the things I'm talking about as far as how bass fishing has become an elitist sport, and it discriminates against the average income American. Because I'll just use myself as an example. When I was 18 years old, nobody wanted to be a pro fisherman more than me. That's all I thought about. And I worked a part-time job of washing cars and bussing tables at a restaurant in Joplin, Missouri, just so I could fish and pay for my little 16-foot flat bottom with a beat-up 9-horse motor on it that I bought for $200 at a rummage sale. So I know how hard it is to be going to school and having to work to pay your way. And then when I got into college, it took me 5 years to get through college to get to my degree, because I went to school full time and I worked at night at an electronics factory to pay for my fishing habit. So I worked at the same time. I didn't have any extra money whatsoever. And so I was 24 years old by the time that I could save up enough money to fish my first year on the Bassmaster circuit. And the entry fees for the Bassmasters were only $3,500 for the whole year. So you could do that back then. Back in 1985, you could actually not have any money like myself, and you could actually scrape together, and you could, put 5 guys on the floor in a roach motel, and you could get by because it didn't cost an arm and a leg to fish. But now you can't do that. And here's one of the things that I don't understand, guys. How do kids now, if you're an 18 or 19 or 20-year-old kid and you're going to school full time, how do you afford to have a freaking brand new, Ranger bass boat with 5 electronic units on it? And how do you afford to spend, whatever it is, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to fish all the Bassmaster Opens? And then how do you afford to spend the $100,000 that it takes to fish the Bass Pro Tour or the Elite Series when you're 20 years old? This is what I'm talking about, how bass fishing discriminates against the average income angler. Because if you're an average income family and you have your household income of $78,000, like the majority of the people do, just down the middle of the road there, or lower, you can't afford to buy your son or your kid an $80,000-$90,000 boat with $30,000 or $40,000 electronics on it, and shell out $30,000 or $40,000 in entries and more, or $100,000 when you turn 21 to fish the Elite Series. Now, I'm not saying good for them if they are able to do that. That's their own deal. That's their own situation that they've got, and whatever, for more power to you. But what I am saying is it discriminates. That's fine for the people that come from wealthy families, and people that have families that own businesses, and people that have tons of discretionary income and are not in that average household income of $78,000. But if you're one of those anglers, if you're an 18-year-old kid and you come from a family like I did that just had an average income and they didn't have a lot of extra money, you are being discriminated against, because the way that the sport has been set up in the last few years, it discriminates against the average and lower income people out there. And one of the different things, and there's a lot of different stuff that goes with this, price of boats have been jacked up. Brand new bass boat now, you're going to spend $100,000 on it. Everybody knows the whole situation with electronics, and every one of these younger anglers out there use forward-facing sonar. We all know how expensive that is. And then we've had a tremendous inflation in entry fees. The entry fee inflation over the past 5 years is completely stupid. It's ridiculous. And you've had an entry fee inflation, and then you've also had a payout reduction. And then on top of that, it's next to impossible to get sponsors now. The way that the industry has shifted, social media has taken over a lot of the sponsorship ends of it. Tournament anglers don't hold the value to companies hardly at all anymore. And on the top of that, the little small pie that is available for sponsorships, there's so many freaking people out there that everybody's just after crumbs. So that even makes it more difficult to rise to the top level if you're an average income angler, because the sponsorship opportunities aren't there. Before, if you didn't have a lot of money, but you had some really good fishing talents and you made a name for yourself through competition, you could get some sponsorships to subsidize you. I'm not saying they're possible to get now, but they're harder than they've ever been before. That is why a lot of these anglers that you see emerging right now, and again, I'm not insulting, so don't stop with the fake outrage. I can hear it coming about, dads getting pissed at me for, saying they're bad for helping their kids out. I'm not saying that at all. Good for you if you can do that. What I am saying is that the fact remains that it discriminates against the average or lower income families out there. It does. There's no question about that. And this discrimination has completely been perpetuated again by the tournament organizations. The tournament organizations refuse to put equipment limitations on particular, boats because it gives one angler an unfair advantage. Let's take for me, for example. Let's say I was a college angler when I turned 19 years old and I didn't have any money and I'm busting my tables and I'm washing dishes to make money. And I show up in my 16-foot leaking flat bottom with a 9-horse motor, and I've got a 12-volt trolling motor, and I've got one flasher on the front of the boat. That's what I had. And then the next dude next to me, his parents come from a wealthy family. He's got a $100,000 freaking bass boat. He's got 5 electronics out there. He's got a credit card. He can put all his gas on. He's staying at a Hampton Inn while I'm staying at the Rat Motel over there with 5 other guys. They're going out to eat at a restaurant at night, and I'm fixing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. This is what I'm talking about, how effed up the world of tournament fishing is right now. And again, it all goes back to the tournament organizations for allowing that. A couple different ways that you could have got around this. Number one is you put equipment limitations on the size of the boat and the horsepower of the boat. And you make it where it's that there's not a inequity, or there's more of a level playing field equipment wise. You put it where like you're only allowed 6 rod and reels. You're allowed to have like a maximum of 150 horsepower outboard, a maximum of a 19-foot long boat, and at least do something to try to reduce that a little bit, and put the electronic limitations on there. No forward facing sonar. You can have one 2D sonar on the console, one 2-dimensional sonar up front. It just levels the playing field. This way, you can have, if some person comes from a wealthy family or whatever, yeah, they may have a brand new 19-foot bass boat with a brand new, 4-stroke motor on it, 150 horse. But the next dude, his family can buy him a little junky 19-foot boat with 150 2-stroke outboard on it for $5,000, and at least the playing field is more level there. We don't have it right now. The playing fields are completely unlevel, and it's due, like I said, to this financial discrepancy that we're seeing in fishing. So I don't know. It's a problem that we have got to address. And to be honest with you guys, when I look at organizations like Bassmaster and maybe not MLF to the extent, it's almost like it seems like to me they're okay with that. They're okay if this sport gets taken over by the more well-to-do faction in this country. And it's okay if the middle income and lower income anglers out there just get passed by the wayside because maybe they don't buy as much stuff. I don't know, but it's a bunch of crap. It's not fair. It is not fair to the 20-year-old kids out there that come from low income or middle income families. And there's no way you can spin it. There's no way that you can put sugar on a turd to make it sound like that's okay and that's the way it is. It can be changed and it can be fixed to some extent. It may not be perfect, but it can be changed by the tournament organizations, and they just refuse to do it. This income division and this income disparity within the tournament organizations is getting larger and larger and larger every year. And what you're going to have eventually is you're going to have the field comprised completely of financially independent dudes that don't need sponsorships. It doesn't make any difference how they do in the tournament. They're going to be back next year because they have the bank to do it. They don't need sponsors because they have the bank to do it independently. And when you do this, you fundamentally it's a fundamental desecration to what, bass fishing is all about, especially competitive fishing. It's un-American, it's anti, everything that this sport should stand for. This sport should be welcome and provide an opportunity for anyone. Doesn't matter what your income level is, what your race, your creed, your color, your sexual identification. It should be open to everybody. It should not discriminate anybody on any level, because fishing is the greatest sport in the world. And right now, we are at such a effed up period in the sport of bass fishing, and especially tournament fishing. I just freaking wake up pissed off about it every morning. I know a lot of you guys are too out there. So anyway, let me know what you think about it. Shoot me a few messages, guys. We'll talk later.